towards this. And here's where Mozart is buried. And there's the monument. This is the monument. That is where the cemetery attendant said, that's the spot where we buried him. Now, it could be anywhere. This is a beautiful monument. As you start to see it, I know I've got another close-up of it coming in, but there's an angel that's leaning over here weeping, and the column is cut off at the top to symbolize that his death was too short. But what I also want you to see is that there's really nothing around it at all. I mean, it's completely wild. And these beautiful wild flowers, this is mostly nettles. Do you know what nettles are? They're kind of like, they're sharp, they have little quills on them. But they kind of elbow each other out, so there's a lot of space between them. And there were some really beautiful poppies there. And I picked several poppies and put them into my Mozart books right from that collection, because it's just so beautiful. It was a very, very, very peaceful setting. Listen to the birds. And you can hear traffic noise here because the Autobahn is really coming right around it, but I wasn't even aware of it when I was standing there. You just get the birds focus your attention much more than anything else. Look how peaceful it is on all sides, you know. These pine trees and, right, there's some poppies, right? Nettles, these are all nettles growing around. Yeah, that's what nettles look like. They have those sharp things, you touch them, they're going to kind of bite you a little bit. See what I'm talking about? Nobody's around. Nobody. I saw those two people on the pathway. This is 2 years or 3 years ago when I was there. But when I went with my wife, there was nobody in the entire place the entire time. Forgot about it. We were just totally alone, just hanging out. Remarkable, right? There were no trees in there at all at the time of his burial. All of these trees are much, much, much later.
But there's bodies buried in.
Presumably, all over here they would have been turning that over. And there's probably also some larger collection just of bones that they were recycling, right? Easy on the camera, guy. But I want to show you a glimpse of where Mozart was buried, supposedly, and also where the composer Albrechtsberger, who taught Beethoven counterpoint, his site is right here, and he's got a beautiful stone because he died in the early 1830s, and attitudes towards death had already started to change by that time. So that's Albrechtsberger's stone in this gorgeous setting. It's also really quite isolated and very beautiful. And so you can see from Mozart's grave where that monument is over to where Albrechtsberger is. I'm just giving you a sense of the setting. Look how peaceful it is. There's nobody around. It's a very beautiful monument, very striking, Albrechtsberger. These then are stones from the 1840s and 1850s. You can see again how attitudes are starting to shift. I can't imagine that this looked an awful lot different when Constanzi came in 1808. I mean, it's probably more overgrown now, and with the trees and stuff, but not much. Another poppy. totally different poppies. I think they're the most beautiful flower
They don't know the bloom.
No.
That's what's so disappointing.
No, I know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why when you see them in a natural environment, then you get what they're about, because they're little tiny accents. You know, you try to grow a whole patch of them, and you never do it right. Yeah, and that's the end of my footage. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I shot, but I just couldn't put together the smallest amount of it. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of that. Because it's, to me, I was so surprised by what I had seen there, because, you know, I'm constantly in search of, you know, making connections with these historical events and these personalities and things of this sort. But it's very seldom that you come across a place that's really fundamentally that meditative. And it's more remarkable because, you know, when I got there, it was very obvious to me that it didn't matter exactly where he's buried there. You get the sense of a very strong kind of communion and a sense of commonality. And it's very, very, very touching. By contrast, when I went to the Central Cemetery in Vienna, which they have a whole circle of composers, that's where Brahms is buried, Beethoven was there, Schubert was moved there, you know, Beethoven was moved there, Hugo Wolf is there, you know, the Strauss. I mean, they're just all there. It's just like tons of composers. I just couldn't feel anything because it was so staged. It was so artificial that for me it wasn't beautiful anymore. It was like being in a CD store or something. You know what I mean? Like I just felt like I was being overwhelmed by something which was staged to overwhelm me. And for my tastes, it's just not very satisfying. So at any rate, what I want to do now is spend a little time studying the Requiem. So the first thing I'm going to give you is a sheet which will help to map this out, and it will also help you because the other side has the study questions for the final exam. And I wish we had time to do the entire Requiem from start to finish. But we've studied a lot of music in this class, which I'm happy about. And I'd rather study some music really thoroughly than a lot of music superficially. Okay, the Requiem Mass is a setting of the Catholic Mass for the dead. It's a standard text and a standard sequence of movements. And this goes back to Gregorian chant. The Catholic Church has a ceremony for departed souls, and this is what the Requiem is. It is a blessing. It's hoping for eternal peace. It's a prayer, a series of prayers. It's showing a little bit of fear for the day of judgment, the dies irae, the dreaded day when we are judged for our sins and for our shortcomings. And ultimately a series of prayers for the departed. So Mozart uses the traditional text that had been in use for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years. And there are requiems since Mozart's Requiem, right? Verdi wrote a very famous Requiem, and so on and so forth. Brahms is famous for his German Requiem, which is a Requiem that does not use the Catholic Latin Mass text, but instead Brahms chose Bible verses that were his mother's favorite Bible verses, and he wrote it more as a requiem for the people who are left behind, who mourn someone who has died, rather than for the person who's died themselves. Very interesting angle on it. So Mozart's Requiem, first off, is from a standard text. Mozart did not live to see it finished. What did he finish exactly? He finished the opening Requiem Anatem, eternal peace, called the Introitus. He finished the Kyrie eleison, that's number 2. Do you see that further down on my sheet, almost 3/4 of the way down? The fugue inspired by Bach. And he started the sequence, the Dies Irae, the Day of Wrath, but he didn't finish the Day of Wrath.